Hey everyone, and welcome to the Love Like Crazy podcast. We're your hosts, Jay and Stacey Coleman, and we are so glad that you've joined us today. We're here in our home studio, and we're joined by a very special friend. Our friend Micah Vidrine is here, and he happens to be our personal CPA. And so just by saying that, you know that our topic is going to be on finances. So Micah, as our CPA, he is a partner at Wright and Moore CPA firm in Lafayette, Louisiana, and he's been there for over 20 years. And so we're excited that he's joined us today, and we're going to jump right in. So Jay, help me out here.
All right, I'm going to help you out, Stacey. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for being a part of this podcast. If you are liking what you're hearing, make sure that you like, subscribe, you share. Give us a review. Let us know what your thoughts are about this. And if you have any ideas, please share them with us about some different topics that you'd like to hear about. Micah, we've known each other for 20 plus years.
Correct.
And Stacey had some great things to share about you. I have some other things on the resume that I will throw out there. Phenomenal guitarist.
Oh yes, absolutely.
I know that y'all actually met because you were on the worship team
together.
That you're still there. The family church in Lafayette.
They let me still play.
and when y'all started coming to church, we just clicked right away, and we started going out to eat. Started developing a relationship with you and your beautiful wife Valerie, and have been just great friends for a long, long time. Here's a couple thoughts: a phenomenal guitarist, a financial wizard, financial genius. You said earlier, financial ninja. I like that one. That's a good one.
He helps us out.
He helps us out. And the first time that you and I sat down, I walked in your office with a shoebox full of receipts, and I shoved it across the table and said, just make sure you keep me out of prison.
Yeah, a little known fact, I almost pushed it back to you at the moment. But we liked you so much. Valerie loves you guys, so she told me I had to do that. I had to continue to work with you guys.
Well, that was back in the days when you were doing our taxes, and there really wasn't a whole lot to add up because it's like, just the bean counting, there wasn't a whole lot.
I understand.
But man, it's great to have you with us today. Why don't you just tell us real quick a little bit about you and your family and kind of where you are in life right now?
Oh, yeah. Married 36 years this year.
Awesome.
Son, Micah, the second. He is a phenomenal guy. He has an undergraduate degree in creative writing.
Okay.
He went. He got his master's at Mississippi College in British Lit. That's it, British Lit, and he teaches high school English now. And doing phenomenal.
And where's he teaching at now?
He's over at Westminster.
Westminster in Lafayette.
In Opelousas.
In Opelousas, great school.
Little north of us. Valerie is still working part-time. She threatens to quit often. I will not accept her resignation.
She works with you.
She works with me. That's right.
We know all about that. Working together.
And we know how this works. Pretty much from about January the 15th till April 16th, we leave you alone. I don't call you a whole lot.
Tax season.
She calls it a tax season widow. Actually, that's what that's how she describes it. And we're still doing our thing. Again, she works part time, so that's why she's still there, because she comes and goes as she pleases. Because when she often says that, she knows the boss real well, but the truth is, I know the boss real well because she kind of comes and goes and does her thing. So,
well, I tell you what, it's been great to watch you guys through the years. Y'all just, this podcast is all about building a healthy marriage and family. And I got to say, you guys have had the epitome of what a healthy marriage is. I know, just like everybody else, y'all have things you walk through, but y'all have such a healthy marriage, healthy family. I've watched your son grow up.
Yes.
He was pretty young whenever we met. And so to watch him grow up, finish high school, go to college, and become the man he is pretty cool to see that. But man, it's great to have you with us. I'm excited to hear. And we got a lot to talk about. My wife has a lot of questions for you.
I have a lot of questions.
I hope you're able to deal with some of these things.
Yeah, we love Stacey. We've been dealing with her a while, so we answer all of her questions. We've never not answered her questions.
Well, we hope that these questions and these answers that we have today are going to be helpful to our listeners. So part of strengthening a marriage and family is dealing with our finances.
Ooh, amen.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, they realize finances are a big part of their marriage, but actually one of the last studies I looked at shows that finances are a big part of why a lot of couples wind up in divorce court.
Break up.
Yeah, they deal with financial tension and stress, and it leads to divorce court. We actually did an episode where I just shared basically the stuff that I share whenever I do a premarital counseling appointment, and talking about finances and things in that regards, just some common sense that we've learned through the years. But you can actually speak to some of these things in a little bit more in-depth way. And I know some of the things we're going to talk about today. And Stacey, you want to kick this off, or you want me to kick it off?
Well, my first question was going to be about, like, what are some ways that we can honor God with our finances, and kind of jump in from there.
Okay. Because I know that, we've known each other. We met through the church and got to be friends through the church, and had a great time these last 25 years. But it is, when you talk about finances, your heart is the same as ours, that God is first in our finances. And it's been that way from day one. Certainly. So just kind of talk about that a little bit, about honoring the Lord with our finances.
Yeah, honoring the Lord with our finances is a key principle. Valerie and I have been blessed and lucky that we've had a couple come to us in our church. They looked at us and said, "Hey, we see how your marriage works. We see how your son is. We just would like to emulate some of that. Can you help us and maybe mentor them?" And it was pre-marriage, so we sat with them and we did some sessions. And one of the big sessions was obviously money, and that's something that I think Valerie and I feel is really the linchpin of our marriage and our family. A quick testimony on that before we get into a deeper part of what does money mean in a marriage. We were about 1 year into our marriage, and Valerie comes to me and says, "We're not tithing, and I think we should be." And I said, "Oh, okay, let's talk that out." So we sat down, we did a budget, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And when we set the budget up, it didn't allow for a couple of things. One of them was we had to wear ties every day with starched shirts. Well, I couldn't bring my shirts to the cleaners anymore. And it also did away with my lunches every day with the guys from the office. So when we did our budget, it was a kind of an eye-opening thing where now all of a sudden we had to switch some priorities in our finances. And one of the things that we talk about, how do we honor God with our finances? I believe the first and foremost thing is to give back to God what he originally gave to us, right? So all of our finances are built on what God has given to us. I think sometimes we lose that. And so when we give back to God, and the Bible talks about bringing it, it's not so much that you're giving back. You can't give back somebody who originally gave it to you, right? So you're bringing it back to him. And I think what that does is it shifts the playing field. Now we have to do more with less. So now we have to trust God more. We decrease so he can increase. So I think that's one of the things that I see in honoring God with our finances.
And I like what you're saying there, because you see this from Genesis forward, that man brought his first fruits to God.
Melchizedek, 10%.
Yep. And you see that when you bring your first fruits to God instead of your leftovers, that the Lord blesses that. And a lot of times people, they look at their finances and say, well, after I pay all my bills, after I do everything, then but the issue is God wants to be first in your finances.
First fruits.
The first tenth, the tithe. And you see that from Genesis all the way through. And a lot of people say, well, tithing's not a New Testament principle. It is the whole Bible principle, because Jesus affirmed it whenever he was walking.
Yeah, one of the things I like to think about when it comes to tithing, it was kind of set out there in Genesis. But what's interesting is it transcended into the Jewish law, right? So there's a bunch of tithing and alms and giving in the Jewish law. And then it went into the New Testament, because in 1 Corinthians, Paul talks about to give systematically and upon your increase. Remember, that's the scripture where Paul said, I don't want to have to come here and wait.
Yeah.
The money should be there, and it should be there when you get it. So that's a little bit of an insight to what the Lord wanted us to do in the New Testament. When we get it, we give it. So we don't wait around. We don't wait till the end of the month. We don't wait till the end of the year. We try to do it systematically.
Yeah. Now, I will say this, because a lot of people, they may listen to this and say, well, you guys are pastors, so of course you're going to talk about this. This has nothing to do with pastoring. I actually tell every couple whenever we do premarital counseling, and I tell our church as well, this is a decision that you have to make for your own life. We can present to you what Scripture says. We can present to you what we have lived out in our own life, but it's a decision for you to make. And it sounds like what happened with you and Valerie, y'all were living, you were married, happily married, probably walking through some of the same things that a lot of couples were, but you came to that realization of this is something that we need to do in our life. And then you made that choice. For us personally, we made that choice. We sat down and started going over our finances, and I had knowledge of it, but my parents didn't really tell me what it was all about.
But I had always been tithing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we planned to get married, we sat down and we talked about it and came in unity about it. So we have tithed from day one.
From day one. And it's one of those things, it was a choice that we made. And so what we tell people is this: we're not interested in getting your pocketbook or anything like that. We just want to share with you, this is what the word says. And this is an aspect, a principle that you can see where the Lord will take care of you and bless you. Now, what I love about it is a lot of times people think about it's just financial blessings. No. It's his peace being in your life, his different fruits of the Spirit at work within your life. And I know when we've seen different things happen in the world, like the pandemic, the financial crisis in 2008, I wasn't worried and stressed and all that kind of stuff because the peace of the Lord was there. It's like, Lord, I trust you with my finances. You are first in my finances. And so I was never stressed out of worry.
And when we put him first, then we see how his faithfulness operate in our lives.
The rest of it's sanctified. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd rather live on 90% blessed than 100% cursed. And I think that we don't always think about the favor of God, because once he has your heart and your money, because we so closely connect money with our success, with our family success, with our heart. And once you start parting with hard-earned money, you buy into it. Now it's like, God, you're on the spot. Your favor now has to be over us. And if Valerie was sitting here and she was talking to us, we couldn't count the number of blessings that the ones that we've never even known, or the ones we've forgotten about through all of our years of marriage where we were faithful to the tithe. Again, I know when a young Christian couple comes into me and they're about to get married or they're married and they allow me to speak into their life, I will talk to them about the tithe, always. But if they're not ready for it, or they're not maybe serving the Lord at that particular time or whatever, you have to be respectful. But when I ask them, will you allow me to speak into your life? That's one of the things we cover.
Well, and good.
I always tell couples whenever I talk with them, I'm going to share this with you because it has been something that has been a principle that we have lived our lives by. But it's your decision, your choice. You pray about it together, and you have to be in unity about the decision you make. I'll tell you a mind shift that I had several years ago. We had, this was probably 20 years ago. And you alluded to this, that the finances, the resources that the Lord places in our hands, they're not ours, they're his. And I think that a lot of people, whenever they think about their money, they think of my money. Well, it's not my money, it's his money. And it's his house, and it's his car, and how I handle the resources he brings into my life makes all the difference in the world, because everybody wants the Lord to bless them. But if you're mishandling his resources that he places in your hands to manage, here's a fancy biblical word, our fancy word we use in church, stewardship. It's really just the redneck words manager, or management.
Management of it.
And so with that in mind, if I'm going to manage or steward the resources that belong to him well, then he will bless me. But I don't do it for the blessing. I do it for the honor.
One of the things I've always tried to protect myself and my heart from is the give to get.
Yeah.
Okay. We have to make sure that we're not giving to get. I think of it's addition by subtraction. Like I'm gaining ground spiritually or in the kingdom because I am doing what I was commanded to do. It's really a commandment. You will bring your tithes to the storehouse.
Right.
And so the Bible says that obedience is better than sacrifice. So I'd rather be obedient to a command than sacrificial when it doesn't really, I'm sure it counts to God, but I'm sure it's not at the same level as being obedient to the command.
Right. Well, he's not, I would say it like this. He's not your supernatural ATM. And a lot of people, if your mindset, and unfortunately you've seen this taught within a lot of churches, and it's error. It's actually, in my mindset, it's heresy. You give to get. Well, can you imagine as a parent, you do something for your kids knowing that they want you to give to them. It's like, what? So the mindset, I just give just to give.
That's conceptually why it's bring it.
Yeah.
Because it's not yours to give.
Exactly.
I can't give something that I don't own.
Right.
Is that?
But isn't it too, it's the attitude of your heart, and it's to be an act of worship, to bring our tithe and to give unto the Lord.
Yeah. I like that. And that's probably a good shifting point right there to go to the next phase of the conversation. And the reason why is because ultimately it has to be about the heart. It's got to be about worshiping the Lord with the resources he places within my hands.
Yes.
Now, how will we handle the rest of the resources? And I want to talk about budget, because I know that you understand how money works. You understand proper and healthy budgeting. So what does a budget look like in the mind of Micah Vidrine?
So when I sat down all those years ago to do my own budget, what I did was, and I think every couple that is struggling with cash flow, debt, credit cards, those are some of the things that plague marriages, and it's really a detriment. What I did was I sat down, I took my bank statements from 3 to 6 months, my credit card statements, and you make a big old pot of coffee, realize you're going to be there for a few minutes, and just
probably longer than a few minutes.
Well, I don't want to discourage people from doing this, but what you do is you simply recap your spending over the last 3 to 6 months, put them into categories, and I'll just share a couple with you. I was thinking mortgage payments, car notes, groceries, fuel, insurance, utilities, entertainment, including Netflix, Hulu, movie nights, date nights. I also would like to share dining out would include DoorDash and Uber Eats. Can't forget those. And then there are other items. You have other essential spending, like say you have a pet. You got to keep your pet alive. And then you may support another family member, something like that. And then there's discretionary spending, which I think is non-essential. So what I like to do is—
What does discretionary spending look like?
Everything that you don't need.
Okay, like you stop at the gas station and get a Powerade and a Snickers bar. That's discretionary spending?
I would think that it would be if you have credit card debt and you have you have to pay with a credit card for your fuel, or you can't meet some of your obligations with cash.
Okay.
Then I think you just have to be a little prudent to figure that part out. I mean, it's not an exact science. There's an art here. And what I like to do is take those expenses in their categories, and if you have 3 months, divided by 3. If you have 6 months, divided by 6. Find out what your monthly budget is.
Mm-hmm.
Find out what that number looks like. And you may have some discretionary income. Obviously, compare it to what you make, and then you do the math. You can do it on a spreadsheet. You can do it on a piece of paper. This isn't rocket science, but it will tell a story. And one of the things I tell people is be brutally honest when you do this. Don't try to fudge it. If you go to the ATM and pull out money, account for it somehow. Let's get a handle on it.
In other words, the only way you're going to get a real idea or a real picture of where your money's going is if you're honest.
Honest with yourself and your family.
Okay.
Because this builds on a bigger concept that we'll talk about once we go through this a little further. So once you determine what your monthly outflows are, then you look at what your monthly inflow is. So that's whatever money you make. It could be your paycheck. You could have a rental property. Could be anything like that. So take a look at your income, take a look at your outflows, and then if that number is negative, then I'm almost sure I could look at you and tell you're living on credit cards. If that number is a break even, then you probably can't afford a tithe, or you probably are choosing not to tithe. If that number is positive, then we have something to work with, and that's where we'll go from there. I think that people's problem isn't how much they make, it's how much they spend. So once you get a handle on that, then I think you can turn this thing around and, again, be brutally honest. Like I shared earlier, I had to iron my own shirts. I had to bring a brown bag to lunch. You know, I'm a big-time CPA, and I'm bringing my brown bag lunch, and I'm thinking, man, this does not look good on me. It doesn't look good on the community. But I realized that my tithing was more important. What I did with the Lord was more important. This budget's going to be the first thing we do to get us kicked off to go in that direction. Don't get discouraged, because we're not going to solve the problem. Okay, it took us a while to get into it. We're not going to solve the problem right away. We're going to have to make a plan, but we have to know what plan to make. So the budget helps us get there.
So choose to make a decision to move forward. Be patient enough to work through the process. In other words, you're not going to get out of it overnight, and be honest with yourself and with your family.
Yeah. So you can move it forward, because what we're trying to do is build a kingdom budget. We're trying to build the kingdom with what God has allowed us to be good stewards of. You said the word earlier, steward. I love that word. I think it's real. So when you do that, then we can start building the kingdom in our realm, what we can control, which is our family's budget. Correct? So that takes us a little further down the road.
Okay. So what were you going to say? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay. So you're talking about the practical steps then to get into.
Yeah. So let's go further.
To getting it all in order, getting your finances in order.
Let's take it a step further. So I built my budget. It looks average. It looks basic. Okay. So I get the question a lot. Should I pay off my credit card first? Should I pay off my car note first? Should I tithe at all? You know, Micah, what are we doing here? And so I think part of building a successful budget includes savings. I think that's one thing that we lack greatly. My goal for my clients is to have 3 to 6 months of just disposable income in an account somewhere. I like to use the example that sometimes when you have an insurance policy, say it's a disability policy, it takes 6 months before that kicks in from the date you've become disabled. Well, what are you going to do in 6 months if you're the main breadwinner or you're the only one bringing in the money? So having a 6-month savings account helps us bridge that gap. And what I like to do is I like to challenge my clients. Let's take a look at our debt. Let's take a look at our savings. Let's take a look at our tithe. And if we can't go to 0 to 10%, let's do something. God will meet us where we are. So we'll do a little bit of that. I like to see savings. I like to see before and after tax savings. I like to see 401ks, IRAs, but I also like to see after tax just being a savings account or an investment account. And even if we're building those slowly, we have something to fall back on. What I don't like to see is us to pay all of our credit cards off. We're cash poor, and then we need some money to do something, pay a hospital bill or put a down payment on a new car, and we don't have it.
So you have to go
back to it's a cycle.
Yeah.
You just end up in the credit card cycle, or the debt cycle. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we have in our financial life. Valerie and I had a little credit card problem early on in our marriage.
We did too.
Yes. Look, I'll be honest. I'm going to be brutally honest with that. So we had to take the title to her car. We had to give it to the bank. We did a debt consolidation loan, and we paid it off in 2 or 3 years. So even we were tithing at that point. It didn't matter. You know, I couldn't flip the switch and make it all go away. It takes a process. The budget, once we see those bottom lines, once we know what our debt looks like, and we want to save and tithe, once we pull all that together, then we can make a plan. Then we can see what we're up against.
Okay. Well, and
I was going to say, some people don't like the word budget. It scares them. And so if we call it a spending plan.
I call it a roadmap.
Roadmap. That's good, because you have to have a plan to move forward, and it's to lead you to freedom. You have to have a map to
know where you're going.
Yes.
Because if you don't have a map, you'll never get there.
Well, I'll tell you what I like is I like that simplicity of a roadmap or a spending plan, whatever you want to call it. I sit down with young couples a lot of times, and they have no idea how to make a budget. They're like, you talk about budget. They're like, how do you do that? Because back whenever we were in school, back in the day, we had, they had consumer math, business math. They would teach you how to balance a checkbook. And they're not learning that in school how to budget, and they don't really teach a lot of that anymore.
Checkbooks are not existent. Right. My son, Micah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but he's never had a checkbook.
Yeah.
It's always been a debit card.
Yes, our kids too.
And then some kids can get credit cards. So it's a struggle for them to know how that works. And then you've got your phone, your balances are on an app on your phone. So you can control your spending just by looking at your app.
Well, as long as you look at that and you've got positive cash flow, you just keep on spending.
Doesn't mean that you have money just because you have money in the checking account.
Now, with that, they don't understand how to sit down and make out a budget and live by that. And so it's funny because a lot of times I'm like, you've got to write this out. You talk about spreadsheet, but a lot of times I get really simple. I'm like, just take a piece of paper and write it out. Because when you see it in front of you, that's when it becomes real.
Have you ever heard of the crazy envelope method?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's real.
I think Dave Ramsey.
That can be real for some. Yeah. That might be a Dave Ramsey thing. I apologize if it is. But I've heard of that and I love it. Especially with your entertainment or your discretionary spending, it would be great to just go to the ATM, take out however much that you think you have available, and put it in that envelope.
But if you put it in the envelope to begin with, and then you say, I'm not going to spend any more than $100 or whatever it is, when that cash is gone, it's gone. And that's to help you.
You can spend it all on day one, or you can spend it all on day 31.
Right.
I've also heard it said to keep that cash in $100 bills, because it's a lot harder to spend $100 bill.
Not everybody takes 100.
Ooh, yeah, you don't. Well, you don't want to spend $100 bill. You don't want to break it. Whereas with a 10 or 20, you'll drop that pretty quick. So.
That's the old saying about having more month than money, right? So that ends up being a problem for some folks, and you just try to get outside of that. One thing I would like to mention, there's a scripture in Proverbs that I think will give encouragement to those people that are trying to do a budget, that are trying to make it happen. Okay. This is the Message version. All right. And Proverbs 4:25-26 says, keep your eyes straight ahead. Ignore all sideshow distractions. Watch your step, and the road will stretch out smooth before you. So there's a little bit of having some discipline with where we are, and keep the path going forward. Don't let the debt distract you. Don't let the bills distract you. Keep it going forward. And I think when you commit to saving a little bit, you commit to tithing a little bit, you commit to making sure that your spending, your discretionary spending is wise, I think you'll see a difference. It'll start happening. It's not going to be next month or maybe the month after, but I think as time goes on, you're going to see your financial position, it'll start to reverse.
Well, and I think that a lot of people say, they look at their financial picture and they're like, where do we start? And I think you start is if you start small. A lot of people say, well, I can't afford to tithe 10%. That's a lot. And I encourage percentage giving. Give 2%. Start at 2%. Save 2%. Set that money aside and slowly begin to build from there. And because a lot of times you share that scripture and it does give hope.
Yeah. If you put a savings component into that percentage, then you feel like you're gaining ground.
Right.
You don't feel like you're just giving all your money to the credit card company. You feel like if it's 2%, like let's say, for example, you have discretionary income of 5%. Well, break that 5% up into savings, tithing, and any other thing that debt reduction, whatever. And I guarantee you, if you have part of that as a savings component, you'll feel like, well, I have $100 in my savings account.
It's
next month it'll be 200.
Reward that you feel like
the next month is 300. And this environment, this financial environment, with the interest rates where they are, you can grow that money a little quicker than you could 2 years ago or even a year ago. Interest rates are up, and even passbook savings accounts at banks are as high as they've been in a long time. And that compound of money gives you that, you look at the account and it gives you this hope, like, oh, I got some money in my savings account. And that's a great feeling for somebody who's been struggling financially.
Yes.
Well, you said something a while ago that I kind of want to, jump on. You talked about reward. And one of the dangerous things that some people fall into this, you get a credit card paid off. You get some debt, paid off, whatever it looks like. And then all of a sudden you have the mindset of, well, I need to reward myself. And a lot of times people go out, they make a purchase, they spend some money to reward. Let's take that trip. Let's take that vacation. And they put themselves right back in. You got to be in this thing for the long haul. You've got to be patient and be in the thing for the long haul.
The budget's important. The budget's important, because I tell people to budget their vacation, budget the next large purchase. Budget the boat that you want to buy, the motorcycle, the large trip to Europe. Budget those things. And then you feel like you're gaining ground, because that money's going into a savings account too. So now all of a sudden you look at your savings account and there's $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. And then that trip doesn't look so bad. And it's not encroaching upon the other money that you're using to spend on your day-to-day life, your mortgage, your utility bills, and the things that are necessary. So I think you can budget in these fun purchases as well.
You can. I think discipline's the key.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we were in debt, credit card debt, and we were working extra. I was teaching piano lessons, and I remember taking like a chunk of every month, like to go pay down that credit card, really fast and stuff. But then after doing that for so long, I just thought, I'd like a new pair of shoes or something. You know what I'm saying? Like that's
another pair.
I don't have, he has more shoes than me, Micah. That is true.
Well, as your accountant, I'm going to have to know these things.
And so I think that it would have been probably helpful back then to have had just that little bit of incentive, to press on or whatever, but not like to put ourselves back into a large amount of
reward
debt.
yourself inside the budget.
If you do that along the way, it's helpful.
To me, the budget is a reward in and of itself. I know it sounds ridiculous. I'm an accountant, so I love it, but it sounds ridiculous. But really, the budget is there to get you to the place where that next pair of shoes is you don't even have to think about it.
Right.
Oh, I've got money to do that.
And there's a great feeling when you pay cash for stuff and you accomplish the savings, you accomplish paying off that credit card. There's freedom there when that happens.
Well, freedom in your finances is a huge step in the right direction. I know for us, when you live at the place where there is credit card, debt that you have, and you're working to pay that stuff off, and you finally get to the place where you have money in your savings, you've got that, but the finances set aside for that 1, 3, 6 months of living expenses, and you look at where you're putting money aside in retirement, all these things, and you realize, wow, there's tremendous freedom in this, and it's a wonderful thing that to be able to go buy a new pair of tennis shoes. I have one pair of tennis shoes.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, okay. And to go get that and not have to worry about like, oh goodness, are we going to be able to get groceries?
It's interesting that the constraint is what's going to give you the freedom. So a little bit of time inside the budget or constraining yourself to the budget will allow you the freedom later to have the things that you've dreamed for, especially things like moving up to, as the family grows, you might want a bigger home. Those are all things that you have to consider, and you can budget that into your plan.
Well, and I just think that it's great to be able to talk about these things, because a lot of couples, they hear talk about how finances could be detrimental to your marriage, but a lot of times they don't know how do we talk about this, and they start talking about budgeting, they start talking about where the money's going, and they wind up getting in a fight about it. And to be able to sit down as a couple and really have a healthy conversation and be honest with each other about where your money's going, the first step. And then the next thing is to understand, if we're going to move forward from where we're at, you got to have discipline. Got to discipline yourself to see that budget through, not to get 2 months down the road. Oh, we're following a budget. We're doing great, so let's take a vacation and, take 3 steps back.
What you don't want, and I've worked with numerous couples and discussed budgets. What you don't want the budget to be is a hammer to beat the other spouse over the head with. Yeah. Well, you can't have such and such, or we can't afford it, and it be kind of almost a reversal of fortunes inside that budget. We use it as a hammer, or we use it as a bat to beat somebody over the head with. That's not what this is about. This is about, again, coming together, knowing what is best for the family, and then be agreeable that one spouse may have a little more discretionary income this month, but the other spouse has it next month because we don't have enough for this month. So let's go ahead, and you want the new pair of shoes? Let's do it. And let's be patient with our spouse. Let's be patient with the budget. Let's be patient with where we're going. Let's just take the discipline and understand that we didn't get into it right away. We're not going to get out of it right away. And I think a little bit of patience, it takes us a long way. And spouses have to be agreeable. They have to be.
They have to get on the same page.
If you think about everything else in a marriage, all the other stuff, do you want to have another child? Do you want, can I change careers, or will I change careers? All of those things, typically the spouses come together to discuss that, right? So why wouldn't we sit down and discuss our finances? I mean, Valerie and I still have financial discussions to this day. It becomes a different discussion when you hit 50. One of the things I did want to mention is looking to the future and your retirement. I told a young couple the other day, I said, it's not too early to think about your retirement today. So we put in a retirement plan into the company, and they're probably mid-30s. We put a retirement plan in their company, and now they're going to start funding it. And they were excited. They floated out because their business is hard on the husband's body. So he's not going to be able to do what he does for another 20 years. So now we're starting to build some savings and some retirement plans for them. So to me, it's never too late to look at the end and start saving for the end, because then you're going to talk about long-term care policies. Then you're going to talk about, where you're going to live. You're going to downsize. How are you going to use that money when you downsize? So there's a lot of other considerations inside these budgets. That's just not to get out of credit card debt today. There's a grand future to look to.
Well, I know when we were 25 years old, we weren't thinking about retirement. We were thinking about how we're going to pay off this credit card.
Well, that's why I think we should stop what we're doing and create a little bit of savings after tax, which is money you can touch without any tax implication. Tax has already been paid on it, and you have it there, and you can use it for something to create that success or that reward. But also it could be there for a long-term savings account for the down payment on our next home or our retirement. But I think we need to look at doing all of those things in our budget, not just hammer the debt and then us have no cash to do anything. What fun is that?
No
We're not
fun
trying to, budgets aren't here to
No
constrict. They're here to try to give us some freedom.
And I think that's what people think when they hear the word budget, like, oh, you're not allowing me to do anything fun. So, but if you have that plan, like you said, you look down the road, because it's a roadmap. Look down the road and you plan ahead. That's so important.
I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm remembering whenever we were young, we were so adamant on hammering away at that debt that we did not budget for you to go get that new pair of shoes. We just used all the money to pay down debt. We did not budget to put money in retirement. We just paid down the debt. And that was not we paid off debt, but it wasn't the wisest course of action because we were not planning for the future.
Yeah, because the Bible talks about leaving an inheritance to our children's children. Well, was that in your mind when you're 25 and you didn't have kids, right? Was that even in your mind? And then the first kid came along, you're thinking, an inheritance to his kid or her kid? Oh, come on.
Yeah.
We're just trying to pay for diapers.
Right. Do you know how much formula costs? So it's a challenge all the way around. And things like life insurance, that's another concept that we never really talk much about, and how much is enough and what type, and the same thing with disability insurance. So all of those things come together. But once you get your budget in order, you can kind of get a roadmap there.
Well, I do want to make a point here, because that is one of the things that this podcast is about a healthier marriage and family. And if you have kids when they are, 10, 11, 12, 13 teenage years, you need to start talking to them about financial wisdom and about planning. I know for our kids, whenever they got into their teenage years, we started talking to them then about planning for the future as far as a Roth IRA. It's like when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, start dumping money into these things.
Can I take it a step further?
Yeah, go ahead.
What about their college expenses? What about their higher education? And do they want to get a master's degree? And how do we fund that? What happens there? So it's not only teaching them about savings, letting them know about a Roth, which I think is I think Roths are amazing. And whoever's not doing one, shame on you. It's a way to get free money from the government. So think that through if you're meeting with your financial advisors. And then, of course, trying to manage your children's higher education needs as well.
Well, I know for the boys, one of the things we taught them was always that you've got to have skin in the game. If you're going to go to college, we'll help you, but you've got to pay for a portion of it as well. And we did that in every area. It's like, I want a new guitar. Well, we'll pay for half of it, but you've got to put up half the money as well and make them earn that, as opposed to just giving them everything. And if you just give them everything with school, they kind of take it for granted. Whereas if they have some skin in the game, it kind of helps them be a little bit more, most of the time, be a little bit more responsible.
Yeah, and one of the things we didn't talk about was, like you were talking about in the teenage years and before, what about private school? Some states, man, you really look long and hard about putting your child in the private school, and private schools aren't cheap. So where's that money going to come from? How are we going to budget for that? So those are all challenges that the budget helps us define, refine, and then hopefully it's that roadmap that we talked about.
That's good. Well, we have covered a lot of topics today, but I think that the healthiest thing to take away from this conversation is it is wise to budget. It is wise to be honest about your finances. It is wise to be disciplined. and to budget. If you're going to reward yourself with a pair of shoes, if you're going to take a vacation, budget that. So is there anything y'all want to add to this before we tune off?
I just want to encourage people not to get discouraged. That's the biggest challenge we find, is when people get discouraged for a good thing. And this is a good thing.
So no matter where you are, stay encouraged.
Absolutely. And I know our listeners are enjoying this. We give them a lot of help.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here with us, Micah. This has been a lot of fun. I know we've talked about a topic that a lot of people say, that's not a fun topic, but talking with you about this is always a lot of fun. So where can our listeners, where can our listeners find out more about you? Where can they find you at?
Well, our firm is WMDDH.com. It's Write More WMDDH.com.
Okay.
That's our website. But we do have a presence on social media, Write More DeHart Dupuy Hutchinson, or it might be WMDDH. So just give those a shot.
Well, your receptionist must have a great time answering the phone with that name. So,
she shortens it.
Yeah. Every time I call, it's just Writing More.
That's it. That's it. That's who we are.
Yeah. So they can find you on social media through your firm.
I am on LinkedIn.
Okay.
There we go.
Micah Vidrine on LinkedIn. That's good.
This has been a lot of fun, and it's been great talking to you about these things. So, hey, listen, I hope that you have enjoyed this episode of Love Like Crazy. Make sure that if you like what you're hearing, that you like, subscribe, and share. Please leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you, and maybe any ideas that you have about the podcast. It's been great talking about finances today. And I'm Jay.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is Love Like Crazy.